Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to WillCast. It's the podcast with the most creative name in the world. Thank you for tuning in, listening, commenting, subscribing, all that good stuff. I appreciate it. Today, Tom Merrick, the Bodyweight Warrior. How are you?
I'm great, mate. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. We've been trying to schedule a date for a while. I've been in the process of moving. It's been a bit hectic, but I'm glad we finally got to do this. I've been really excited to talk to you, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. Sorry, it's just my fault as well. Life has been pretty mental, but yeah, glad we managed to finally sort things out.
Yeah, so, one thing I always like to ask people in the fitness business, like yourself, about is I'm always fascinated to hear how they started their fitness journey. What sparked it for you?
I mean, probably. How old are you, Will?
I'm
Patrick, yeah, sorry.
23.
You're 23, mate. Okay, it's that's. Oh, hold on. I'm not quite old yet, but yeah, man. I feel like probably the same as many people. Um, when you get to like kind of the age, I don't know, 18, 20, you know, I feel like that's a usual time people start to kind of explore what their body is capable of. Usually for aesthetic reasons. That's why I originally first got into it. I was just like a little bit chubby. So I started doing some cardio at the gym and lifting some weights. You know, didn't really have any idea, much the same as everyone when
Mm.
they start. So there was no real uh, emphasis outside of that. I was a big fan of the whole Gymshark community, but early days Gymshark with like Matt Ogus and um, yeah, Steve Cook, all of those sort of good stuff. Funny times, man, funny times. And then gradually kind of transitioned into did that for probably a year or so, and gradually sort of transitioned into making some okay strength gains as well. And I was like, oh, cool, I'll do some powerlifting, so squat and deadlifting, did a little bit of Olympic lifting. That was really the first sort of few years just playing around with that. And I ended up getting glandular fever. I think it's mono in the US. So I kind of basically lost like 2 or 3 years worth of gains in the space of like 2 weeks. Like I lost like 12
Wow.
kilos, about 20 pounds, 24 pounds in about 12 weeks. And I was like super weak afterwards. And when you come back from a viral infection such as that, there's the risk of like post-viral fatigue. It's not really, it is a risk to some extent, similar to some extent long COVID. But yeah, so you got to take things easy. And the doctor was like, oh, you should just try bodyweight training because that's
Mm.
easier. I was like, okay, cool. I'll do some push-ups and some rows and things like that. And yeah, and I just ended up getting really into that for whatever reason. Um, and one thing led to another. I found handstands, and I was like, handstands are really cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep doing those. Really enjoy doing that. And got into a bit of gymnastics at uni, and that was probably like 7 years ago now. 7 years ago, 6 years ago that I've been doing the kind of the bodyweight calisthenics stuff. Um, and it's only now that I'm really stepping back into a little bit of weightlifting as well. I'm doing a bit of
Mm.
like heavy squatting at the moment. But that's basically how I got into things, pretty.
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely relate. Like, I feel like that's the typical story of the
Yeah,
male getting into fitness. First, starting off, wanting to change their physique, and then they kind of learn a bit about what fitness is about and what their bodies are capable of, and then start getting interested in the strength aspect as well. That's how I like got into calisthenics as well. I started weightlifting too, and then slowly got into calisthenics because I realized it was really fun to see what I could do with my body. So I feel
I
like.
think it's an important thing for young men in particular to do. Um, is that physical challenge to some degree? It could be in the gym. The gym seems like the most obvious and simplest example at the moment.
Mm.
But I think like having to, it goes back to the old Socrates quote of, no man should grow old without knowing the beauty and strength of which his body is capable of.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely applies to females as well, obviously. But, spending some time and understanding that is crucial. And I think it builds, certainly, I remember at 18, like it built for me a massive amount of confidence when I was
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
lifting stuff in the gym. That led to so many things outside of just lifting weights, man.
Yeah, like a good work ethic, like in other aspects of your life, right? You learn to work hard, and you notice that hard work pays off. So you can transfer that to other aspects of your life.
Yeah, without sounding too cliche, I think understanding that you have quite a lot of control over many aspects of your life. So fitness, if you're not athletic, or if you're weak in certain aspects, it's very easy to just focus and put some time and be consistent, diligent, and you will make progress towards it. And as you said, it applies with life, with business, with careers, with lots of things, with relationships.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. Something I've been really excited to talk to you about, because you are, in my eyes, the guru of stretching and flexibility. Can you talk a little bit about the benefits of stretching?
Sure. I mean, I'd like to point out that I'm definitely not the guru. I'm a practitioner. I do practice flexibility. I do teach flexibility. I wouldn't say I'm a guru. I've spent some time in the trenches working on it. I understand it, but I understand it to the level of some other people out there, such as Emma Lewis, Thomas Kurz, many others. So I would like to say that initially. In terms of benefits of flexibility, so there's some myths and there's some facts that are probably important to understand. Flexibility has a benefit in terms of its application to you and what you want to get out of it. It ultimately, as with anything, comes down to the individual. I would say for general life, it's probably pretty useful to be able to touch your toes. It makes just putting your shoes on.
Yeah.
Doing day-to-day stuff.
That's
if you
true.
have kids, picking up your kids,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many things that would make easier. If, for example, you want to do bodyweight training, then again, being able to touch your toes, having a good pike will mean you can do an L-sit. It means you can do a press to handstand, potentially have a good shoulder flexibility. It means you can handstand better. Being able to do a middle split means you can potentially do straddle front lever, straddle planche easier. So really, it depends. The benefits of stretching are down to the individual. There certainly is definitely a big mental aspect of stretching, because the central nervous system controls that stretch reflex. Stretching can definitely have a relaxing effect. That's the reason many people do yoga. It integrates in this kind of relaxing kind of side of things, breathing, releasing tension, for want of a better word. But one thing that it doesn't do is it doesn't prevent injury. So it's a common one that it's kind of given. It doesn't actually do that. It's not been shown to do that.
That's actually something I thought. I didn't know that. I thought it actually was a good help to prevent injuries. So I run in the morning, and I always stretch my calves, especially before and after I run, to try to avoid injury. But
yeah, so injury is an interesting one. Like injuries in general, they're so multifactorial. You couldn't put it down to being like, if you stretch, you're going to reduce your chance of injury. I think really the overwhelming preventative measure you could take, the biggest one would be just getting strong or building up physical capacity.
Yeah.
So injury occurs commonly when the requirement exceeds. I mean, there's many instances in which injuries occur, but when we're talking about injuries in relation to like fitness, it would be when the capacity of a tissue is exceeded by the demand of whatever activity that we're doing. So we're building up your work capacity, so being able to do exercise, being able to do stuff. Maybe that's getting stronger. Maybe that's just moving more. That in itself will reduce your risk of injury. Stretching, perhaps not. That being said, if you injure yourself in a range of motion that's quite extreme. So, for example, if you don't have the capacity to going back to the touch your toes example, and you try to do something in that position, which you don't have the flexibility for, maybe then there was an argument that like increasing your flexibility, increasing your stretching could reduce that risk because you'd be able to get into a bad position. But generally speaking, strength is the biggest one. But flexibility can also be trained in a way like doing strength training is a form of developing flexibility. There's a great phrase by Charles Poliquin, which is you get strong in the range trained. Wow, I'm going to pretty butcher that quote. That's definitely not the quote. And for some reason it's passed my mind, but essentially strength is gained in the range trained. That's the quote that he says. So whatever you try to, if you do a squat and you only squat down a quarter of the way, you're going to get strong a little bit outside of that range. But if you do a squat for a full range of motion, like ass to grass, then you're going to build strength through the entire range. So strength is gaining the range trained.
So how about like when you stretch, if you have really tight muscles and you stretch, you relieve the muscles. But if you have tight muscles, is that a cause for injury more easily?
I don't think that as far as I'm aware, the data on that isn't super concrete.
Okay.
So again, like, yeah, if you had, tightness in fascia isn't necessarily like, you can't really think of it like an elastic band, right? So you can't think of tissue as being like physically tight. Like you'd stretch an elastic band. It's more like, so the stretch feeling that you get is something called the stretch reflex. And this is a spinal reflex that basically is your body putting the brakes on. It's saying like, it's a protective reflex, and it's like, whoa, we don't know what's happening past this point. We haven't experienced this before, maybe, or something bad might happen. So I'm going to put the brakes on. The stretch reflex is actually a contraction of the muscle, so much the same as if you're doing a bicep curl or whatever, and it just stops you from going any further. And to some extent, it's involuntary. So stretching that, the early stages of stretching and flexibility comes from literally you getting better at tolerating that feeling. So, stretching hurts, right?
Yeah.
there's pain with stretching.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the more you stretch certainly the earlier phases of stretching, you get better at tolerating that pain. So you do something that hurts, and then relatively speaking, when you try to do it another time, it hurts less because it hurts before. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's just like regular training. Like when you do a pull-up at first, like the one pull-up hurts your muscles, right? It hurts. It's hard to do, but when you get stronger in that, it hurts less. You can do more pull-ups. So one pull-up is not going to hurt as much as when you could only do one pull-up, right?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, exactly. It's almost like if you like stub your toe, and you hurt your toe, and then somebody punches in the arm, it takes your mind off.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
you stubbed your toe. So it's just like this perception of pain. So that's one. It's another reason why like doing foam rolling has an impact on like, so when you foam roll or get like a tennis ball and or getting a massage, for example. There's other factors that go into it, but a lot of it comes down to like the massage, the foam rolling, the tennis ball, that hurts. And it makes the things that hurt in comparison feel like it hurts less. So that's the initial phases that happens with stretching, and that tightness sensation. But ultimately, that feeling of tightness is always going to be there at the end of your range of motion. So even now, like I can do, front splits or middle splits, but I still feel tight. It's just that where I feel tight is a much further degree than it was beforehand.
Yeah. Is there anything such thing as, there's obviously you can overtrain when you work out. Can you overstretch? Like, I mean, obviously if you go down too fast in a position that you're not capable of going into, but I mean more of like if you stretch for 4 hours, do you lose the benefits at some point?
Yeah, I mean, like anything, you can do too much of things. At the end of the day, there is like a demanding aspect in terms of the central nervous system on stretching. Like it's kind of like training at the end of the day. It depends on what you do. Again, like so, you could do remaining deadlifts, like so the hip hinge deadlift, and that is a way of training flexibility in the hamstrings. And that's obviously like quite intense, and you can do way too much of that. But then sitting in a pretty casual stretch, like just trying to touch toes or whatever, that's a very different degree of intensity. So you can do chilled out stuff much more often. You can do intense stuff less often. That would be kind of you can do too much, and there is to some extent, because as I said, like the stretch reflex, that's a contraction of the muscle. You can stretch too much and you will get like almost you'll begin to feel tighter because of it, because you're just like essentially pissing off the tissues around that point. But I would say that's probably less of a problem than people doing too little.
Okay. I assume you stretch every day.
I don't actually. I probably do stretch to some extent every day, but I don't stretch intensely every day.
Okay. So when you do stretch intensely, how long do you go for?
I mean, so asking me now is very different to.
Okay.
So I've had splits to some extent for like 4 or 5 years. So now my flexibility training is like, what do I need to do to just like keep this here?
Yeah.
And also like what's valuable to me. This is what I went back to earlier. Like it's an individual thing. Not everyone needs to be able to do splits. So at the moment, I've stretched maybe intensely like half an hour a week.
Okay.
But in the past, I've probably done. I mean, when I was first getting into like flexibility training, I used to probably stretch like 45 minutes a night, like 30 minutes, probably 30 minutes a day, and then I used to pair that with like probably some more intense stretching, like twice a week, probably like 30 minutes like twice a week, and then 30 minutes every day. But the 30 minutes twice a week would be more like strength training. You know, like it would be like for sets, weighted, heavier, whereas the daily stuff would be more relaxed.
Have you heard of David Goggins? Sorry, go ahead.
I have heard of David Goggins, yeah.
Yeah, he I read his book, and
he loves stretching, doesn't he?
Huh?
He loves stretching, doesn't he?
Yeah, he at some point stretched for 6 hours a day, which is why I'm curious about, you know, overstretching. Like, that just sounds absurd. Can that actually be beneficial?
I mean, again, like putting it into the context of who David Goggins is, like the man who did like 4,000 pull-ups in a day, like that's probably a little bit too much.
Yeah. But that's crazy. 6 hours a day.
That's what the guy does. That's what the guy does.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's mad.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's a difference as well. Like you go to circus schools, for example, you see a lot of young females with like ridiculous levels of flexibility. Like their warm-up will be like, I'm gonna sit in a split with like my foot behind my head for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Another one for like, and just sit in the same stretch for like 10 minutes. So there's a spectrum here. But I think for most people, like doing 30 minutes a day, you probably see some pretty good progress. Like is it even probably less than that?
Yeah.
Certainly if you do the weighted stuff, like the loaded stretching, the more intense sort of strength training version of flexibility, 30 minutes twice a week, like you'll see some good progress. And there's some long-lasting progress as well. Like you make long-lasting changes to the length tension relationship in the muscle.
Got it. It's fascinating. It's stretching is one of the aspects that I haven't gotten that much into until just now, and I'm really fascinated about it. And I have started a regular stretching routine. I do.
Nice, man.
I do.
What are you doing?
I do 30 minutes a day. I'm trying to work towards the front split, especially.
Nice.
And I stretch mostly my lower body because I feel my muscles in my lower body is so tight, always, constantly. I don't know if it's the way I sleep or what's going on. Maybe.
I mean, there's always like an individual spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So generally speaking, those that if we have like a spectrum, we'd have like those who are predestined towards strength will find flexibility. They're going to be naturally tighter, and those that are sort of predestined towards flexibility will be naturally weaker.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's people who break that rule, but that's kind of a good general rule. I think as well, like obviously the activities you do will feed into that. Like running has a natural tendency to tighten up the hamstrings, and that's a way of improving running economy. So the hamstrings sort of like in the calves will be naturally want to tighten up and act more like springs to increase your ability to run for longer periods of time, etc. So activities will tighten up the legs to some extent, and it just takes a lot of time for that to change.
Yeah.
And I think again, like what I said, like people feel tight regardless of how flexible they are. So although like you feel tight every time you stretch, like probably the likelihood is that you're able to get into a deeper position now than you were able to get beforehand. It's just like the sensation's still the same. It's just further on.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Something this is going away from stretching a bit. How tall are you?
I'm 6'4", well 6'3", about 192 centimeters.
Okay, so you're a pretty tall guy. I'm the exact opposite. I'm really short. I am 168 centimeters, so I'm really short.
Oh, nice. Pretty good for calisthenics, though.
That's exactly what I wanted to get into. Is it true that taller people have a harder time with calisthenics?
Absolutely, yes.
How come?
Because it's all down to levers. Like, so just think, go and have a look at gymnasts. Like, you put a normal sized person next to any professional gymnast, like the normal sized person will be like, especially if you're from Denmark and I'm from the UK, like we got pretty tall populations. An average of like 5'11". Like your average gymnast is gonna be like 5'6". I don't know what that is in centimeters.
It's probably 170 something.
So about the same height as yourself. Yeah, so like generally smaller, and that's like it just makes life easier.
Mm.
A lot of bodyweight training has to do with levers and fulcrums, and like if you have long arms, it's going to make things harder for various reasons.
But is it more the balancing aspect or the strength aspect?
It's the strength aspect. So
Really?
very simple example. Think about if you were to hold a weight in your
Yeah.
hand and you hold it next to your shoulder,
Yeah.
and then you hold that same weight, but you try to move your hand straight out in front of you. As that lever extends, the load, the strength you need to hold it increases dramatically. And the same thing really applies to most bodyweight positions. Leverage is the biggest thing. So
But-
if I've got, sorry, go on.
But I would just think that, you know, when you're taller, you obviously weigh more, and therefore your base level of strength should be relative to your body. No?
Yes, but it I would say that probably the demand on leverage does not increase at the same rate as the increase in body weight, like the relative strength size. So technically, yes, I would say if we're in a sport such as where the load is external, such as like powerlifting or something like that, then yeah, probably you would expect to see. I don't have the data on this, but I'd have thought in terms of like relative strength, so like percentage of body weight would be the same for like shorter people and taller people. There's probably, I'd still think like even a squat, like there's gonna be a disadvantage if you've got long femurs, like the thigh portion of your leg, it's gonna make the squat harder, but it will make the deadlift easier. So even then, like there's still gonna be biomechanical differences that's going to make it harder for you to do the sport. It definitely, I promise you,
Yeah.
it's very rare. Like, there's a reason gymnasts aren't 6 foot.
Yeah, I mean, it's right. You're right. I was actually a gymnast when I was younger, and I'm short,
Yeah,
so
you're a
maybe that's
cheater
why I
then.
was naturally drawn towards it. Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, maybe. I mean, gymnastics tends to have like a bit of a meat grinder effect. So you get a bunch of kids that start gymnastics, and like everyone goes, and then basically the people who do well kind of stay, and the people who don't do so well tend to leave.
Are you saying I didn't do well, Tom?
I mean, yeah. For whatever reason, like whether just generally people who want to do gymnastics, like or you get injured, or you aren't that successful, whatever. Providing you have the desire to actually do the sport.
Yeah, of course. Tom, it has been a pleasure to talk to you. I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, that's all right, mate. That's a pleasure to chat. Some good questions.
Thanks. And yeah, let's wrap up with anything you want to plug, anything you want to say.
I mean, if I was to plug, obviously I've got lots of videos and stuff on YouTube for handstands, strength, flexibility, all of that sort of good stuff. So just search my name, Tom Merrick, or Bodyweight Warrior. Hopefully those videos will be there to help you out. I have an app which has training programs in that very proud of. So that is also available. Again, just search name or Bodyweight Warrior on your app store. But other than that, just be consistent and put in the work. Good things will happen regardless of what it is that you're working on.
Awesome. I love that message. To the viewers, thank you for tuning in, liking, commenting, subscribing, all that good stuff as always. Appreciate that. See you next time. Peace.